Redesigning School Counseling, Intro for Counselor Educators. We are very, very excited to have everyone on the call. We launched this for all schools and for all graduate students in the country, actually in the world, last March. And so we're very, very happy to tell you about the resources that we have available. As we go through the webinar, if you want to minimize your control panel, just click that little orange arrow that points to the right, and that will make your control panel small. And then if you need to open up the control panel, just click it again, and that will make it larger again. If you have a question or a comment during the webinar, there's a couple things you can do. One is you can raise your hand, and then we'll unmute you and see what your question or comment is. And then you can also type a question. Chris Avona from our office manager, is in the call. She'll be handling the technical aspects of the webinar as we go. So, introductions, very quickly. My name is Sue Reynolds. I'm the Executive Director of the American Student Achievement Institute. And also joining us today are two counselor educators who are using RSC in their classrooms. Brandy Oliver, who is an assistant professor of school counseling at Butler University, and also Dr. Charlene Alexander. I understand we're having a little bit of sound issue with her, but hopefully we'll have her in a little later. Charlene is now the Associate Provost for Diversity at Ball State University, but she was the former Director of the School Counseling Program at Ball State. So we're happy to have both Brandy and Charlene here to talk about how they use RSC in their graduate courses. I'm also very, very pleased. As I mentioned, we have 25 people registered for the webinar, representing 16 different universities. So I'm very pleased all over the country, west, south. So we're happy to be spreading the word to counselor educators all over the country about these tools for graduate students. So today's agenda will start with a very quick intro to RSC. And then Brandy and Charlene will talk about how they use RSC in their classrooms. And also they have found RSC to be a good resource for K-CREP. So Brandy especially will talk a little bit about that. I sent you earlier this morning a document that she put together on RSC and K-CREP for your review. And then at the end we'll take questions. So we'll begin with just the idea that RSC works. I know whenever I'm hearing about something new, I want to know to begin with, is this going to work? Is it worth my time? So a couple things we wanted to bring to your attention. There are now 106 Indiana schools that are Ask-A-Ramp schools, and every one of them use the RSC process and the RSC online system to meet the criteria for the Ask-A-Ramp award. We designed RSC well before Ask-A-Ramp, but discovered that when the RAMP criteria came out that it crosswalked very well with RSC and enabled our schools who were using RSC to also become Ask-A-Ramp. So the other thing that I think is interesting is that in addition to the 106 schools that earned the Ask-A-Ramp award, there are another 74 schools in Indiana that meet all of the criteria for Ask-A-Ramp. They've gone through a review from our Indiana Department of Education, who has designated that they meet all of the RAMP criteria, but those schools chose not to apply for the RAMP award, probably because of the fee involved. So there are really 180 RAMP-eligible schools in Indiana. So the process works, the online system works, and we're now making this available to counselor educators and all graduate students so that lots of schools in the future and then students in those schools in the future will benefit. So I also wanted to present to you a study that was just conducted last spring, published last spring, about the Ask-A-Ramp schools in Indiana, all who went through the RSC process, and the impact of that on academic achievement. This was published in the ASCA Professional School Counseling Journal in February, and was also presented at the ASCA conference last summer. The study was done by professors at University of Scranton, University of Connecticut, and Mercy College. And in the study, they looked at 75 Indiana RAMP schools, and all of those schools had earned RAMP by meeting the RSC standards and using our process. And then they used 226 control schools that were not RAMP and also not involved in any way in RSC. And for the academic benchmark, they used the school-wide AYP results. And what they found that they explained in the presentation they did last summer was that Indiana RAMP schools, and we can say Indiana RSC schools, evidenced higher achievement at all grade levels. So we think this is really concrete backing for RSC, and also for the fact that RSC makes a difference in terms of academic achievement. So a little bit about RSC's roots. RSC actually started at Indian Creek High School, where I was the counseling director. The counselors there were frustrated at this time as the early 1990s because we didn't have a common language for school counseling. Services were spotty, and some kids got a lot of services, other kids got no services or very little services. And then also there just wasn't enough time to meet all the students' guidance and counseling needs. I was very, very fortunate in the early 90s to be involved in a Lilly Endowment experiment. It was a 3-year experiment. They wanted to see what would happen if school counselors were connected with experts in systems change from the business community. And we really got to have one-on-one, significant one-on-one time with people like Peter Senge, who wrote The Fifth Discipline. We really learned about what it meant to be a learning organization and how to use data to help that learning. So in our school counseling program, and this was early 90s, we began using data to define our school counseling program and then to evaluate our school counseling program. And that all evolved into a data-driven school counseling model that had data targets which revolved around specific choices that we wanted kids to make. And then the program also focused on multiple guidance providers, that lots of folks could be involved in providing guidance lessons, which were more educational in nature. And then we also added an accountability measure to our program, that our school counselors were accountable for changes in student choices. By student choices, we mean things like kids who choose to be assertive rather than aggressive, kids who choose to turn in their homework, kids who choose to take algebra, who choose to submit a FAFSA, who choose to complete a career interest inventory. There was a list of choices that we wanted kids to make, and then we put data to those choices pre and post after our programming. So that was how it all started. Then we wanted to widen the circle, and there's several parts to this story. In 1995, I was fortunate enough to be able to join the ASCA board. And while on the ASCA board, I suggested that we create a developmental school counseling task force, and then was asked to chair that task force. I made a motion while on the board to create the ASCA national standards, and that was, such a great thing that's happened, I think, to our profession, is those standards that were developed by ASCA. I also chaired the ASCA Leadership Development Institute, and our process, Vision to Action, we actually taught to the state presidents and president-elects in 1995. I also became the ASCA counselor, the secondary counselor of the year, which was kind of fun. And our program at Indian Creek High School started to get a lot of attention. We were featured in the Harvard Education Letter, the Occupational Outlook Quarterly, and there's also a section on our program in the school principal's book, Breaking Ranks. So that was part one of widening the circle. Then part two was, in Indiana, we were concerned that we didn't have standards for school counseling. So I went to the State Department in 2001 for the purpose of creating those standards. And we created student standards for guidance. We created program standards for school counseling. And then we rewrote the licensing standards. So lots of people were involved in those licensing standards for school counseling. And in the development of all of those standards, there were broad-based groups of people. The writing team for each of those was, 25, 30, 35 people, all representing state-level organizations that had an interest in student guidance and student counseling. We also, while I was at the State Department, created some tools that were distributed to every student in the state. We wrote a student guidance magazine. There was a grade level magazine for each grade level. We talked about that with counselors as being like a textbook for school counselors to use in their classroom guidance lessons. And then we provided for every student in grades 8 through 12 a guidance portfolio. And then finally, the last thing that I did before leaving the State Department is we created the Indiana Gold Star School Counseling Award. And that was given to schools who could document that they had met the Indiana program standards for school counseling. So that was part 2 of Widening the Circle. And then the other thing that happened right before I left DOE was that we had the program standards for school counseling. We had the Gold Star Award in Indiana, and then ASCA came out with their award. So we quickly did a crosswalk between our Gold Star standards and the ASCA standards. We found that ours were just as rigorous, if not maybe a little more rigorous than ASCA standards. And we went to ASCA and said, would you trust the Indiana State Department of Education to do a review on your behalf of the ASCA ramp standards criteria? If the Department of Education were to say that a school has met the ASCA ramp criteria, would you accept our review? And ASCA said yes, which has been wonderful because that means that any state in any school in Indiana that applies for the Indiana Gold Star Award automatically then gets the ASCA ramp award, providing that they submit the application and the fee. There is no second read by ASCA. ASCA is trusting the Indiana Department of Education to do that read. So I thought that was really nice, and I was really proud of ASCA that they made that connection with the Indiana Department of Education. Then part 3 of Widening the Circle was I decided I wanted to just be able to not be bound by the politics and the procedures of a state agency. So we created the American Student Achievement Institute, which is a 501c3 nonprofit. And our organization, our mission is to raise achievement and close gaps. Our expertise is in the process of change. We have 7 staff members. We're located in Bloomington, Indiana. And we have several different initiatives, and one of which is Redesigning School Counseling. So Redesigning School Counseling then, our organization launched in 2008. We decided to give it away to all Indiana schools in 2009. And then we also created free tools for Indiana DOE staff to review online school counseling portfolios against the Gold Star rubrics and also the ASCA rubric. And then to have an online way to provide written feedback for schools regarding the degree to which they met those standards. Then just last March, we decided to provide RSC free to any school and any graduate student and any counselor educator. So RSC is now available to everyone. Our funding, everyone always asks, where does the funding source come from this? Our funding source is ourselves, ASA. However, we do plan in the next few weeks, actually, to seek funding from foundations or elsewhere to promote this free tool now that is available nationwide, actually worldwide. Okay, so real quickly then, what is RSC? This is what we call the school counseling pyramid. It's the foundational belief upon which RSC is based. And we were trying to look at how does school counseling connect to achievement. We knew that from our own practices and our experience that there was a connection, but we had a hard time explaining that to principals and superintendents and policymakers. So this is the pyramid that we came up with that's made a lot of sense to people who are counselors but also non-counselors. And the idea is that when students are involved in sound guidance and counseling programs, they tend to make better choices in areas that impact achievement, and as a result of that, achievement goes up. So very, very simple. The focus of school counseling programs then is to design programming that will help kids make good choices, and as a result of that, student achievement will increase. Then when designing a school counseling program, which is what RSC is all about, we just work that pyramid backwards. We start with the achievement goals, And we use the goals that are in the school improvement plan. We start with those goals, and then we say, okay, in order to meet those goals in the school improvement plan, what choices do kids have to make? And then we define all of those choices that successful kids in school make. And then we look at, okay, then what guidance activities do we need to put in place, and what counseling initiatives, interventions do we need to put in place to help kids make those good choices. So that's our school counseling pyramid, and it's the foundation behind all of RSC. And again, the focus of an RSC school counseling program is to help kids make good choices. This is the process. I'm not going to go through the whole process today. The process is embedded in the RSC online program, and as you go into the program, you'll see the different steps of the process. So RSC, basically, it's a set of online tools. And really, that's all it is. It's just a group of tools that help school counselors collect student data, have key discussions with an advisory council, and then create a data-driven and accountable school counseling program that includes a vision, and to meet RAMP, it would be a vision and a mission, then does a data analysis, comes up with student choice goals, does a data analysis and comes up with root causes for why students aren't making those choices. And then based on all that data, the schools develop activities that would help kids make the choices that have been targeted. The other thing about the program is that it helps schools document their program. And I think for you, it's also going to help you document the activities of your graduate students, and which I'm told will help with your KCREP reviews. Okay, so here is, I'm just going to go through a couple of screenshots to kind of show you what the program, online program entails. This is what we call the process page. You'll notice that in the process page, let's see if I can get the cursor here, there's 3 tabs here. Ours is a 3-year rotation. So the first year, schools come in, they click on this first year tab, and here's all the steps that they do. Second year and third year, they click on the annual update tab. That helps them on an annual basis look at new student data and then make tweaks in their program. And then the third year, they click on that renewal tab and they go through a major review and renewal of their program. You'll notice that there is a set of activities for each month. So we're looking at, normally it doesn't have to happen this way, but normally schools will start this process in the spring. So here are March activities. We've got several schools that are starting these now as August activities. That's fine. So here are March activities, and you'll see that the first thing that they do is read a document about RSC, and then they watch a webcast. Then they click on their RSC uses. So the point being that on this page, it's just a step-by-step process. So when your graduate students would go in, if they're using RSC to create a school counseling program for a mock school, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but they would just go through step-by-step, do the activity, and then click it off that it's finished. Then this is the manual page. There's a manual that provides the schools or your graduate students with everything they need to put together a data-driven, accountable school counseling program. So I'm going to go kind of delve into the manual. Here is the manual, for example, for the first advisory council meeting. So we give the schools, or we give your graduate students, everything they need to hand out to at their first advisory council meeting. So they have an agenda. They've got a PowerPoint presentation. Everybody has our permission to edit anything. So if they don't like the sample agenda that we've provided, they just change it. If they don't like one of the slides in the PowerPoint presentation, they just take it out or they edit it. So this is just a starting point for folks. And then in the second section for each of the advisory council meetings are all the tools that they need. So the first tool there is how to prep for meeting 1. The second tool is facilitator notes for meeting 1. The last tool is what to do after meeting 1. So again, we've tried to kind of take the, we've tried to do all the grunt work so that the schools and your graduate students can do the thinking work and not have to worry about all these things. In some graduate programs, the class will pretend that they are the advisory council when a student, then one of the graduate students would facilitate this discussion. So if one student might facilitate the first meeting with the advisory council in a mock situation or role play, the next week, a different student may facilitate meeting 2 with the advisory council, while the rest of the class pretends that they're the advisory council. I actually taught organization administration at IU, and the way I did it in my course was I had each of the graduate students get a couple of friends and their spouse or their children or whoever to pretend that they were their advisory council, and they actually went through the discussions with their small group of friends pretending that they were the advisory council. So, and then we have other graduate programs that have decided not to use an advisory council. They just kind of skip that step for right now. So I wanted to show you some sample enter-edit pages. This one is the priority goals data. And when the schools enter their priority goals, they go into a page that looks like this. And one of the things I wanted to point out is we've auto-populated baseline data for them. This comes from the RSC student survey. So it is perceptions data. If the school doesn't want to use perceptions data from our survey, they can just go over here and click Other Data. And when they click on that, then a page will come up that asks them, well, what are you going to count? What is the benchmark? And what is your baseline data? So the schools aren't forced to use the survey data, but for school counselors without a lot of time, this is a really good way to get data. It is perceptions data, and we always point that out, that this is perceptions data, but it is data. So, okay. This is the activities enter-edit page, just to give you another example where counselors would put in their activity title, description, the activity type. When they click on program goals, all of the goals that they have previously entered appear, and then they can click the goals that the activity is going to address. And then the guidance indicators, when they click on select indicator, all of the indicators pop up that are aligned with the ASCA national standards, and they can pick the indicators that this activity is going to address. The last thing that's there on the sheet is they also can identify which student groups are going to be involved in this activity. So if this is a closing the gap activity, they would indicate that by showing that this is an activity for free and reduced lunch students, or Hispanic students, or whatever. Okay. Also wanted to point out that there are some tools in the online system I think are very valuable. We now have thousands of guidance lesson plans in our database. And so one thing that schools can do, or graduate students can do, is go in and do a search for lesson plans. So, they can go in and say, give me lesson plans that other counselors have submitted for grade 4. Or they can say, give me lesson plans that people have submitted that would address this specific indicator, if they're looking for ideas to how to help kids master an indicator. That they can also, if they find a school's program that they like, or a specific counselor that they think that counselor develops good lesson plans, they can enter the school name in or the person's name in and search for all the lesson plans that person has implemented. So I think this is a kind of a cool tool. Then I mentioned earlier the student survey. Last year we surveyed 40,000 students in RSC. The year before we surveyed 40. The year before that we surveyed 80,000. So it's a very robust survey. We're ready to go national with that survey. Lots of data in our database. The types of questions in the survey, there's 2 default question sets. One asks students about their future plans. Another default set asks students about what choices they're making at that grade level to help them be successful at school. And those choices might be social personal choices, or career choices, career development choices, or academic development choices. and I might mention for the graduate students, when they create a mock school, what we do is we're putting 100 students per grade level, and then we're doing the average percentage of students at that grade level who answered the question each way. So if 43% of the fifth graders said yes to number 10, then in the mock school for that grade level, we would make sure that 43 students in the mock school had said yes to number 10. So the mock data is based on the real data that we've collected from all of these students. Then there's also 3 optional set of questions for schools doing RAMP. They have to do them for RAMP purposes. But we're also asking students about their guidance needs, their social personal counseling needs, and then the perceptions of their school counselor. So we're asking them what they think about their school counselor's knowledge level in academic, career, and personal social, the skills that they have in those areas, and then the counselor's dispositions. Does your counselor like students? Does your counselor have time for you? Those types of things. Those 3 question sets are optional. And then there's one other survey that we provide for counselors. It is also optional. Primarily it asks counselors how they use their time. We want to put together some data on that. And then we also ask the counselors about what opportunities they provide for for students. A lot of times we find that the reason, when we do the root cause analysis, the reason that kids don't have knowledge or skills is because they've never been given the opportunity to develop that knowledge. So we ask counselors in this section, do you provide an opportunity for your students to take a career interest inventory, to do a learning styles assessment, just all the different things that might be part of a school counseling program. Okay, this is just a screenshot of what it looks like when a school goes in to do the survey. They first do a survey setup where they identify which question sets they want to be on their school survey, and then there's the different steps of the survey administration. The students are given a code. They go to the survey page, they enter the code. That tells our computer that this is a student at ABC School in 5th grade. We have an online survey for grades 3 through 12 and a teacher facilitated survey K through 2. Then one other thing I wanted to get into is some of the reports. And the first report that your graduate students or your schools can get from the online system is a really cool report called the Student List Generator. During the survey, students may release their survey responses and contact information to their school counselor. When they say yes to that question, that gives our nonprofit organization permission to release that information. We have been through lots of this with an attorney who had expertise in FERPA. We've also been through this with the head of FERPA. We just wanted to make sure that we had everybody's okay on releasing this information. So we are FERPA compliant in the way that we're handling the data. And the only thing that will release to the counselors is individual student information about their future plans and their student choices. We do not release, and it's technologically impossible to get out of our computer, individual student information for their guidance, knowledge, or their personal social needs, or their perception of their school counselor. So, for example, a counselor could go into the system and say, please give me a list of students who get C's and D's on their report cards and don't know where to find extra help. Or if their school is focusing, let's say their school improvement plan is focusing on Hispanic student achievement, they could go in and say, please give me a list of Hispanic students who get C's and D's on their report card and don't know where to find extra help. And then they can ask for an email list. And then how simple is it to just send an email out to all those kids and say, hey, on the RSC survey, you reported that you didn't know where to find extra help. Did you know that we provide tutoring and math on Mondays and Thursdays after school? So, lots and lots of different ways to use that information. And then it's also possible to get an Excel spreadsheet out for doing mailing labels. So, for example, a counselor could go in and say, please give me a list of kids who are interested in information technology and have never done a campus visit. And then they could send a mailing about a program at a specific college to that student about maybe a weekend IT information that a specific college is sponsoring. Anyway, so lots of different ways to get student lists out, and I think that's, in my practice, when I was a school counselor, I would have loved to have had that. This is just another report, just a sample. This is the program activities report. We had a school in a relatively urban area that the school board was, or the superintendent was proposing to the school board to RIF all of their counselors. And their advisory council took this report, went to the school board, and said, we want you to understand you're not riffing people, you're riffing programs. And here's all the activities, all the programs that we're going to lose if you riff our counselors. And the school board that night turned to the superintendent and said, don't you dare riff a counselor. And they ended up keeping all their counselors but one. Another school with their advisory council just this year, the advisory council started looking at all these activities and all the student needs, and the advisory council went to their administration and said, we need to hire a guidance secretary and another counselor, and they got them. So, just getting these documents out, being able to put down in documentation everything the counselors do is really, I think, powerful. So another report that's in the system that is one of my favorites is a lot of times we find that schools or counselors will have counseling goals, but then there won't be any activities to support those goals. So how are kids going to reach the goals if there's no activities associated with goals? So this is called this is a report called the Goals Crosswalk. We give the goal. So in this case, the goal is they want students to discuss their future plans with their counselor. And then this is an actual school's screenshot. And then all of the different ways that this school is going to, all the different activities that this school is going to put in place to make sure that the students are discussing their future plans with their counselors. Then what the report will do is if there's a goal that has no activities that support it, a red flag comes up on this report and it says, you're not doing anything to support this goal. Would you like to drop the goal, or would you like to add activities to support the goal? And then the counselors can clean up their program doing that. Okay, another report is the calendar. This is not something the counselors have to type in. After all the activities are entered, then the computer just takes all of the dates associated with those activities and puts them in chronological order and prints this report. And then finally, it's possible to publish the school counseling program online. So all the counselors have to do is push one button, and our system creates a web page for them that has links to their advisory council roster, their vision statement, their program goals, priority goals, activities, and their program calendar. And then they can do a link to that page from their school's website. So it's just a kind of a way to get out all this documentation, all the cool stuff that the counselors are doing, all the great things, to just go out public with it in a very easy way. All the counselors have to do is push a button. So, and that leads us to where we are now, which is Widening the Circle Part 4. So we are giving this system away now to every school and every graduate student, every counselor educator. And now we're into a mode of doing outreach. So we're talking to as many state school counseling associations as we can to see if they would like to promote this to the school counselors in their state, or at least make them knowledgeable about it. State departments, large school districts, we're working with several, and then counselor educators, which is why we're doing this webinar. Subscribing to RSC for your graduate students is very, very easy. They go to our website, then /RSC, and then right here there's a link that says free accounts for schools and graduate students. So they click that link, and then this is the page that they go to. There's a question that says, is this a real school or fictitious school? So your students would say this is a fictitious school. And then we ask them, will you be using this for a graduate course? And they say yes. And then we're going to ask them information about the course and your name and your email address. What we're doing with this is we're building a database. Down the road, in talking with Brandy and Charlene, down the road, we're envisioning a page that would pull up all kinds of student documents, graduate student documents, organized by the KCREP standards, so that when you have a KCREP review, the reviewer could just pull up that page, click on the KCREP standard, and then all the documentation from your students would pop up. So we're populating this database. We're getting the information in. As we are seeking funding, that will be one of the things that we want to develop, is to make this really user-friendly for KCREP and counselor educators. A couple of things. When your students enter their school name, a lot of students, graduate students, make a mistake where they'll put in their university or their college name there. This is the name of their fictitious school. We suggest that your students name their school after themselves. So it's Jane Doe Elementary School. That will help you when they turn in paperwork to you, reports to you for a grade. That will help you know whose schools, which students' report that is. They forget to put their name on it. And then also, your graduate student would pick what grades they want to be in their fictitious school. So they would say, you know, grades K through 6 or grades 9 through 12. And again, one little tip here, sometimes graduate students get kind of carried away here and they'll say this is going to be a pre-K-12 school, but that forces them to do lesson plans and guidance goals and priority goals at all the different grade levels. So we suggest that they kind of focus on whatever building level they're interested in working at and then limiting their grades to those. Okay, so RSC and graduate courses. These are the schools in universities in Indiana that are currently using RSC as part of their programming. And that brings us up to Brandy and Charlene. And 2 questions. The first one is, how do you use RSC in your graduate courses? So, Brandy, you want to jump in?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I am excited to be able to share what we have done here at Butler. And I talked to Sue, and she knows I kind of started differently, but I thought I would focus on how I have used RSC in the last 3 semesters. I teach this, use RSC in a course. It's an administration and guidance and counseling course, which is all about building a comprehensive model program. And I was fortunate enough to have some recent alumni out in the local area that were willing to partner with our class. And so I would have our students get in groups between 3 and 5 students, and then they were partnered with a local school, school counseling director, and they would go to the RSC system like Sue just showed you, and they developed a mock school, and they shared their login information with one another. But then they also had access to a local school's login information, so they could see that school's data, also reach out to the school counselor, see their school improvement plan, have access to other types of data such as discipline data, and together then they worked, and I told Sue, it was such a win-win because our school counseling students were learning this system, and I think you all have seen the great tools that it has, you know, watching the webcast, the step-by-step process of what this looks like, but then also having the benefit of working with a school, and that school loved having my students fresh set of eyes on this data to be able to see some things maybe that they had not seen in the past. And then they would go in their mock school or fictitious school and put in the goals and the vision and come up with interventions. But of course, we did not want them to do that on the school site because that needs to be done by the school. But it was just, it worked really well in that way. And so that's kind of how I have used the tool. Sue, do you want me to elaborate on some other pieces?
What did you have your graduate students turn in documentation to you? How did you do your assessment of how they were doing with this?
Right, and that's what I love the publishing online, and we haven't quite figured that out quite yet for graduate students, where they can't click a button on, you know, and it uploads for me to go in and see. I, throughout the time, always had access. They would share their login information, so if they had questions, I could log in and see their system as well. What I have them do, they have an option. They can turn in a binder, and they can print those documents off and build their program, and I have an outline of what they need to turn in, from their list of advisory council members all the way to, you know, program goals and their interventions. or they can create a website. And actually, the last couple of semesters, more students have created a website using, we have WordPress here that's a free resource, or Weebly, and then they just copy and paste this information. And so it's an online tool that they've created this program, and they have tabs across the top of the page. It's a great tool. Some of them have used it. I've heard out in the field when they go to interview, this is something that has been such a showstopper during interviews, that they can talk all about the components of a program and how they plan to impact student achievement. So it's been really, really successful. And I know Charlene wants to jump in, but I was just jotting some things down as I was watching and listening. The benefits for graduate students, I think, are endless, but the knowledge just that they have of this tool, and what's, I think, really fun is I don't know, about 6 months maybe ago, I think Sue and I were talking, and we have recent graduates that are taking on the task of implementing a comprehensive program very, very early in their careers. And I think they have had the exposure to this tool, so they have the confidence to go ahead and take this on early. It seems like a lot of times they're not afraid of this, I guess, anymore. They're willing to do this. It doesn't look so scary because they've done this, in a controlled classroom type setting, and they've had interactions with counselors that are doing it. So they feel very confident and competent to be able to take this on earlier.
Yeah, and I think one of the nice things is that they've used these tools in their graduate course, but then when they go to their school, no matter where that school is, in a different state, wherever, they can get a free subscription to RSC for their school and just take the same skills that they've learned in the graduate courses, the same tools, and just start doing that with their school. And I might mention, too, we're starting to hear from a lot of principals in Indiana that our principals, with 180 ramp-eligible schools that have been through RSC, in Indiana we call them the Gold Star schools, but principals are now becoming very aware of this, and we're hearing when they're interviewing, they're asking counselors, are you from a graduate program that's taught our Gold Star, they call it Gold Star in Indiana, or during an interview, they'll say to a counselor, we're looking to hire a Gold Star counselor. Have you been through that process? So I think that's really cool. And the other thing, Vindy, that I thought was nice, and I think Charlene did this too, is in your graduate programs, then not only are your students learning this, but they're teaching existing counselors in the schools how to use these tools to create a data-based program. So I think that's a kind of a win-win.
Yeah, and speaking of that, there was one school that she didn't even have her own login information from her school, and so we were teaching her how to contact you to get the school's login information, and then so that was a really neat process that they kind of walked this walk together, and I believe they just submitted for Gold Star and will be awarded that at our fall conference. So it's neat to watch that process come all the way from start to finish.
Great, good. So and then one other thing before we move on to Charlene. This is so there's several different ways that a counselor educators can evaluate the students' work. One way is that you can ask students to print reports and then turn in the paper reports. So they can turn in their vision statement, they can turn in their mission statement, they can turn in their goals or their activities or their activity goals crosswalk or whatever you want to see. And then another way to do it is that they provide you with the username and password for their mock school, and then you would just go into their website and open up their vision statement and look at it there. And then I'm just the light bulb went off, Randy, as you were talking. What we don't have yet a way for graduate students to post publicly their mock school counseling portfolio online. But if we did that, then you guys and the counselor educators wouldn't need to get the username and password. You could just ask them to publish, and then it would just be there. And then that would also give the graduate students a way to tell a future employer to go online and just open up my portfolio if you want to see my work. So we'll get that done. As you were talking, I grabbed a piece of paper and my pen, and that's now on the to-do list. Thank you.
Just to jump in, I don't know if you want to talk about KCREP, but I think that's what would be great if they had that tool to publish. And just as the Department of Education has a rubric to score the published portfolios, we could then have a rubric that we could match our KCREP standards to that online tool.
Let's hold off on KCREP and kind of go to that in a second. Charlene, are you able to hear us, and can we hear you now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, good. Good.
I'm so sorry for that. I am in a new office with a brand new computer, and it had a few bugs in it.
No problem. You're here now. Do you want to talk about how you're using or how you have used in your past courses RSC at Ball State?
Very similar to what Brandy has done. Our students use Redesigning School Counseling when they log into it. However, this is during their internship year. So it starts in that first semester and it continues in the second semester. They have a year of working with their internship site. So even though they're logging on as this is a fake school, they're actually using real data from their existing internship site. So very, very, again, for our students, we ask them to partner with each other and create subgroups to create their advisory council so they can advise each other on the data as they look at the data from their internship sites and developing goals, a mission statement. What I do on my end is I also collect our students' username and passwords, and then I create rubrics to assess how well they've done in developing their goal statement, their mission statements, and as you've seen as we go through all of the elements on the Redesigning School Counseling team. We review their minutes and go through their resources and priority goals that they established. So it's very helpful for us to then later, because we've been going through KCREP accreditation process to use that data to demonstrate that they know what they're doing. Hold on. Additionally, I think it's also been very helpful for us to look at and very, very critically each of the students' progress across the entire year to determine how well their knowledge and skills and practices have improved over the years. So some of the pieces that we've seen at the beginning really change, and the product is very different at the end of the year, which also similar to Brandy, our students will upload that information into their digital portfolios. Our students are required to do digital portfolios for all of their for all of the work that they're doing to demonstrate how they've met all of our ASCA standards at the end of the year. So it's very helpful in that regard.
Good, good. Charlene, can you talk a little bit? When I met some of your students at the Evidence-Based School Counseling Conference that was in Kentucky last March, and I was blown away by their excitement about RSC. I mean, I really was. Can you talk a little bit about that?
You know, I think the excitement is simply infectious, to tell you the truth. One of the things that we make an incredible, that we emphasize in the program is how important it is for them to operate from a social justice perspective. So the excitement about being able to use data, and they've seen this actually with some of our other alums and some of our other students, how students have been able to use data to make significant changes in the work of schools and how students have been impacted by the work of our school counselors. So it's just a very infectious environment here. They love using data, which is strange to say, but they do. They really, really enjoy it. It's just become a passion for them. Yeah. And this tool has enabled them to document the efficacy of that social justice mission. So it's been wonderful.
Yeah, I was just so impressed. I was so impressed with the way they had I mean, I didn't know I was going to meet them. They didn't know they were going to meet me, and all of a sudden they're talking about root cause data and root cause analysis and force fields, and I mean they had it. I mean, I was very, very impressed. It was so easy. Actually, what I felt was how fortunate their schools were going to be to have them as school counselors. They just had it nailed. So very cool.
They've all got jobs.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
So, okay, so let's move to KCREP, because I know that for counselor educators that is a big deal. Brandy, you want to talk about kind of your vision and what you've done already with RSC and KCREP?
Sure. And real quickly, I just wanted to echo what Charlene said about the social justice piece. I jotted that down. I think that this tool and the data provide such a great opportunity to have some really rich conversations about equity and how we advocate for all students. And it really helps them see how they are leaders in the school. So those are some things that maybe we don't necessarily think about, but this tool really, I feel like, has really moved some great direction on those 3 areas.
And I might jump in. The data that we provide, we talk about achievement data and achievement gaps, but we've started talking now about guidance gaps, and all of the guidance data, all of the student choice data, that is all disaggregated as well. So if we have 80% of the white students telling us that they've done a career interest inventory, but only 20% of the African American students, then what does that mean? Disaggregating that guidance data has been huge, and it's been really added to rich discussions. Okay, so KCREP.
Yeah, so we sent out a Word document sheet, or maybe it was a PDF of KCREP specialty standards. And to be honest, I just went through the school counseling specialty standards probably about a year and a half ago, and it was very easy, very quickly that I could highlight the standards that were very much applied to the Redesigning School Counseling program. And so then as I designed the project for my class, I developed a rubric and embedded several of these KCREP standards on how I would assess those. But then also the original document had highlighted. I highlighted yellow standards, which you see in front of you, and then I highlighted some in green, that it could really even adapt as we take, for an example, she showed you how you can develop maybe guidance lesson plans to address some of your goals. Well, then I took it a step further, and one of the KCREP standards is classroom management, differentiated instruction, things like that. And so we spent some time talking about those specific topics, and we're talking about when we design lesson plans to meet our goals, what are some other things we need to think about? How do we differentiate instruction? What would classroom management look like? So this tool gives you kind of that step to jump into other areas. And so I want to say what's in front of you. It's an easy fit. When you look at those specialty standards, there's even several more, I think, that can easily fit when using this tool just based on what is in front of you and where you can go with it from there. A lot of the knowledge base are very simple. The skills and practices, as Charlene said, using it out in the field, and that's where their skills and practices come into place, and having those rubrics and how we measure progress, because they're going to obviously have time to practice, and we want to see improvement over time. So these are the standards. Hope you had a chance to look over them. Like I said, these were the ones that I found to be very easy to apply and build a rubric around using the system. And then there's several more that I think you could easily adapt depending on assignments and what you have your students take out into the field to work on.
Good.
Good. Also, one of the things that's been very, very helpful for us is to be able to identify exemplars. So with some that are very, very exceptional products that our students have created, some sort of middle of the road, some not so good. And this is how we've been able to develop a dialogue of how do we document and how do we use this data to demonstrate student success, student progression, and how would we use that information as a program to make changes. So if I'm noticing, for example, that there's one area where our exemplars are not wonderful, and we want to have a conversation around, well, what is it that we need to do to help them create better exemplars? I can document that conversation with examples directly from Redesigning School Counseling to show here's your students, this is what we've done in the program to sort of tweak instruction, to change some of our instructional methods to make sure that the students are able to give us the best work and to meet a specific standard.
That sounds good. We're approaching 11 o'clock, and I do want to be able to take some questions from folks. And if you have a question, just stick your hand up. Just click that hand button, and Chris will unmute you, and we'll see what folks want to know. Chris, do we have questions?
We had a couple of written questions.
Okay.
A couple from Lourdes. Let me see. One was, can the content, let me see, hold on a minute. Can this be used in a content-specific course, e.g. career development and counseling to develop specific program interventions in that area?
I think it could. The program is designed to look at all of school counseling. But I think if you were in a career counseling course, in the survey there is a section of guidance knowledge questions on career, for the career standards. So you could pull those out and then look at how to use that data from the survey to direct you to specific career goals and then career activities. And then you could probably do the same thing with interventions with the social personal part. You could look at the counseling questions that are all about students' counseling needs, stress, depression, bullying, all that, and use that to data to look at designing the social personal activities, the interventions. So I know, Brandy, Charlene, do you have a take on that?
I mean, I'm just thinking it's something that you could build. This is a tool that your students could create an account early on, and within each course they can do some different things with it. That's what I think is really neat. The content that they're learning, then that's the data that you start to pull out and you look at, and then you help build, if it's career-specific interventions, you look at the student choices that the kids have made that are surrounding careers or their future goals that has some really great information about future plans. And so you could just take content-specific and continuously build their online tool. So I can see it easily working that way.
Right. And I think, is Tanya Balch on the call? Chris, was she registered? Was she able to join us?
Yes, she's here. Would you like me to unmute her?
Unmute her.
Okay, hello,
Tanya. I'm going to put you on the spot. Tanya's at Indiana State University. I know their original plan was to incorporate RSC through a bunch of different courses. And Tanya, where did you end up with that at Indiana State? Are you there? Did we unmute her?
Yes, I did unmute her.
Okay, we're putting her on the spot.
Well,
okay.
I would also like to suggest that, some of the lesson plans are, if you pull out the ones that are specific to group or career, you can really build a lot of assignments for students around specific guidance plans, and those can be very, very helpful as well.
Good, good. One of the things we did on the lesson plans, too, if your graduate students find the lesson plan that they like, they can import it to their school. It gives a reference to the original creator of the lesson plan and then imports it into their school, if the originator gave permission for us to do that. Another question, Chris, or a hand up?
Yes, we do have several.
Okay.
Another one that did come in from the same person, Lourdes. Hold on just a second. My screen is shrinking.
Lourdes is from Queen's University.
She asked, what is the procedure for getting student and parent consent for ASA having, using, and releasing this information?
because this is a school initiative that a school is doing, with FERPA, there is no need to do a parent consent. So it's a school initiative, and it's school data, and it's done for school purposes. So we're okay with KCREP with that. I did get a statement from we actually started working with an attorney who specialized in FERPA. I do have a statement from him that I can email to you if that's an issue. Once in a while we have a school that has a school board that wants to see something in writing that somebody has blessed this as being FERPA compliant, and I can provide that.
Okay. Tanya, just a comment from Tanya. She is here. I'm not exactly sure why we can't hear her.
Okay.
There's another question here from Christine Schimmel.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of, if any, ongoing support do you provide to counselor educators as we begin to use RSC with our students?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what's been happening so far is that when, like Brandy or Charlene, when they get stuck or need help, they'll just call me. And right now, as we're just launching this, that is real doable. So if you want help, call me. Brandy, I know you've said before to different groups to feel free to call you. Is that offer still open?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, well, until it gets to be a full-time for some. But yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I've worked with a couple counselor educators.
Yeah, so call Brandy. I'm sure Charlene wouldn't mind a call or two. Call me. We're really happy to do that. The other thing that we've done in Indiana is we've done a yearly webinar with the RSC users to just kind of touch base with folks to talk about how they're using it so that people can share ideas. And Brandy and Charlene have participated in several of those. So at the very least, we'll continue doing that. The funding that we hope to go after would again, allow us to get the word out about this, allow us to do more work with the KCREP standards so that you have more of the documentation that you need. But also we'd like to be able to provide that tech support. So I'm fairly confident that the funding is going to come. So look for that in the future. But right now it's me and Brandy and Charlene if she'll take a little too. So another question.
I think this probably is along the same lines from Mike Carnes at Troy University. Asks, could I get someone to mentor me through this?
Yeah, right, the three of us, just give us a call. And it's really, I also sent you this morning a flyer to give to your graduate students that has the web address on it and what RSC is all about. So I think the start is for yourself to create a mock school and go in and just play with it, and then pass out the flyer to your graduate students, ask them to get on board. And then you can kind of decide which parts of it you want to use. Another possibility is at the beginning of every month, every set of activities, there's a webinar a webcast that explains like how do you put together a vision statement or how do you do your goals. So we designed this so a counselor with no training whatsoever could just pick it up, get the professional development as part of the system, and then do the activities for that month. So theoretically, you could say to your students, this week I'd like you to create a vision statement. Watch this webcast. Here's where you enter the vision statement. And you could just show them that, and they at home would go in and do that. But the instruction is in those webcasts. So there's one for each set of activities.
And that's what I would recommend, definitely to have the counselor educators go ahead and develop their own mock school and go through each of it. That was so helpful to me. I did my own, and I went through each of the webcasts, and I did every single step so I could learn the system. And it's still, there's a learning curve. I would say after a couple of semesters, then I felt proficient. And I was just very transparent with my students that we're learning this together, and Sue's been helpful today. So
that's good.
I also have a mock school on the system that I was able to go through and enter data and play with it and create all of the elements of the program as well?
We're actually on version 2 of RSC. We just launched that last March as we went national, and I think it's really user-friendly. So, but again, if you get stuck, call us. And the other thing is we like, as much as we can, to give you what you need. So just like when Brandy just said, it'd be nice to be able to publish the graduate students, check, we'll get that done. So as you find things that you would like to be different, also please let us know that, because if this isn't user-friendly, no one's going to use it. So we really do depend on your feedback and like your feedback. So other questions?
Okay, Sarah Wimmer has a question. She says, great information. I'm excited to start this in my internship in Gary Community School District.
Good.
The mock school is a great idea. What about school districts that have a tight budget? Do you get a good response from such districts?
Well, it's free, so yeah, we do. I think I'm trying to think of what resistance have I found. The only resistance I've ever heard from an administrator, and it only happened one time, was a principal said, I do not want my counselors to do school counseling work. I want to use them as a junior principal. And so he did not want any of that data to get out because he didn't want his counselor to be a school counselor. But overwhelmingly, what I hear from the administrators is, oh my gosh, we've wanted a way to make school counseling concrete forever, and now I get what school counseling is, and I can see the documentation, I understand the terminology. We use terminology that is principal friendly. Some of the terminology that's been used in the past in school counseling, things like I don't know, responsive services. I mean, to a principal, that doesn't really mean anything. So we use very principal-friendly terms, guidance, counseling. We define those two. So with principals, it's been very well received. I mean, amazingly well received. I also noticed that when I present at principal conferences, if I put in the title of the session that I'm presenting just something about school counseling, I don't get principals there. But if I name the session, how to evaluate your school counselor, they all come. I've got them hanging out in the halls trying to get in the door. They don't know about school counseling. So I get them in with how to evaluate your school counselor, and then I teach this, and then they're like, oh, wow. And then the counselors in the building can document everything they're doing, and they love it because then they get to show their principal everything that they're doing. It's really a win-win. In terms of the counselors, we've had so many schools in Indiana go through this. It's kind of now become part of the culture. It's part of the norm. But even so, this is some work. I mean, it takes time to have these advisory council meetings in the actual school and get all the documentation down. But once they start meeting with their advisory council, they find that they have cheerleaders out there in the community, and they love it. It also, I can share my personal story. Before I did this in my school, my program was just kind of a hodgepodge of a lot of stuff, and I was trying to be everything to everyone at a moment's notice. But after we did this, with my community, my advisory council, we decided what was most important, and we decided that there were areas and things, activities that I was doing that I should drop. So our goal in RSC is to make the school counseling program manageable, and all the way through, there's kind of a thing that we do that really, really works. We put all the data out to the community, and everybody who wants to fix all these things, get all the guidance lessons out, all the social personal needs they want them to address. And after we get all the needs there and all the sense of urgency is built, then we come back and say, okay, here's how much time your counselors have, and here's how much money funding they have. And then the community is like, what? Why is our counselor doing attendance? Why is our counselor doing book rental or substituting? Or why don't our counselors have any budget? And so then the community gets up in arms because they're concerned about the student data, and then they speak up and become advocates for the counselors in terms of getting the counselors more time. And we say, hey, community, the more time you can get your counselor, the more this data you can address. So the community really becomes an advocate. So long story short, when we're talking with the counselors, we say, yes, this is a little bit more work on the front end for a year as you're putting this all together. But then your program is going to be a good program within the time constraints that you have. That's manageable, that's purposeful, that's planned. And in the long run, it actually is less time because you'll let go of the things that aren't having an impact or that aren't addressing your goals. So at any rate, that's a long story, sorry. So any other questions?
I was going to try to unmute Tanya once again and see.
Okay, great.
Tanya, can you hear us? Well, she can hear us, but we can't hear her.
Okay.
She did type in a comment. She said next year it will be incorporated into the career course and internship.
Oh, good.
If that answers.
Yeah, so if I could just speak, I think, Tanya, I'm going to say this okay, but I hope. So what they've done at Indiana State is when the students come in, they start with RSC, and then there's different parts of it they do in different courses, and they work on it through, I think, through all 4 years, or all of 4 years, all of the time that they're in that program. So, okay, anything else?
Okay, one last follow-up from Lourdes. Does the school admin have to approve using this given that student info is being shared?
We advise the counselors to make sure that their administrators are involved. We'd actually like the administrators to be on the advisory council so that they're helping to design the program as well. So that differs in different schools. In some schools, we have, like one of the schools that we're working with right now, that school has forbidden anybody in their school district from giving a survey. So they've had to go to other types of data other than perceptions data, which is actually a good idea anyway. But so they didn't give the survey at all. They were collecting their data some other way. Other schools, it's a school board that has to make the decision about whether or not a survey is given. And then sometimes it's the principal. But yeah, we would always advise that it's good to have your administrator aware of what you're doing. That doesn't mean that the administrator has to be gung-ho about it. If the administrator will just not be a blocker, the school counselors can go on and do this. And really, in RSC, I don't think I've ever had a principal purposefully get in the way to block this. We've had several that just don't get engaged, and that's fine. As long as they don't block, we can, the counselors can go ahead. So.
Okay, that is all of the questions.
Okay, thank you, everybody. And again, in my emails that I sent you this morning, my contact information is in there. So feel free to give us a call, and really appreciate everyone's involvement, and look forward to seeing your graduate students subscribe to RSC. And if you need help, please, 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 we really want this to be used. Call me, call Brandy, call Charlene. And we'd be happy to help you get started and to mentor you as you go through. So I'll keep you posted as well if we get funding and we are further developing this with KCREP. Of course, we'll make you aware of that. You're in our database now, so we'll keep you posted. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate your involvement.